Well, avid readers of Christian fiction, if you've been around for a while, you've seen a familiar face. I'm so excited to have Mike House here today. We're talking about his book. Okay, get ready for this title, guys. The most useless man in the apocalypse, which I was I was surprised, but then I wasn't surprised because it seems like you write so many different things. So first of all, welcome, Mike. And for those
Thank
who
you.
aren't familiar with you, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm semi retired from a completely different career. My initials are indeed M&D. That's a plus and a minus, right? Because it gives me some recognition. I'm MD House.
Yeah.
But it also makes me harder to find sometimes in searches because
Oh,
everything that pulls up is House MD, the TV show, right?
right.
So kind of fun. But I spent most of my career in corporate finance. So I was watching the IPO of SpaceX today.
Yes.
That's kind of interesting to me. I know how those things work. And I think they said that 4,400 millionaires were made today
Wow.
because a lot of the employees of SpaceX got paid in part with stock. That's the
Wow.
same way Amazon did it.
Yeah.
And they now have a whole bunch of money.
I don't understand how any of that works, but I'm happy for them.
Yeah. So I've written 15 books. So now that I'm semi-retired, that happened about 6 years ago. I started writing more. I only had one book at the time, and then I
Yeah.
published Barabbas. We were talking a little bit about my
Yes.
latest, and we'll touch on that. And I always wanted to write science fiction and fantasy.
Mm.
And my first book was science fiction, and then I did Barabbas, which was really weird. I never expected to do that. But I've done uh, young adult fantasy now. I've done some biblical historical fiction, some nonfiction. I did a study guide for Barabbas for the first
Oh, good.
Barabbas book. That was a lot of fun, similar to what The Chosen does.
Yeah.
And now I've done contemporary fiction. I wanted to write a Christmas story. I had no idea what it would be about, right? I've read some good Christmas stories like The Christmas Jar and some of the others.
Right.
And I didn't want it to be long. I wanted it to be Christmassy. And then somehow the apocalypse got wrapped up into it in my mind. And I came up with the title before I ever wrote one word or
Wow.
came up with one single plot element. It was, oh, the most useless man in the apocalypse, a Christmas story. And in part, and it's part in part because I think about these things, right?
Mhm.
We're thinking about the end times, and are we prepared? And so I
Right.
think about that in my own case. Am I prepared for apocalyptic times when the water is off and the power's down and there's no gas, nothing? Am I really that handy? And the answer is no. And so so it's modeled in part after me, the most useless man in the apocalypse. But the message really is twofold. One, that none of us is useless in those
Mhm. Mhm.
stark situations. We aren't. There are ways that the Lord can use us in whatever circumstance we're in. None of us are useless. We have talents we haven't even tapped into. There are
Right.
things we can do that surprise us. And people say that all the time when they get thrust into these, life changing or life threatening situations. They say, wow, I did something I never thought I could do.
That's
Right.
right.
And in many cases, they say, I felt God helping me do
Mm.
that.
Mhm.
Right. So that's the first message. And the second message is that even in the apocalypse, Christ is real.
Yeah.
All of it is real, right? And we'll celebrate Christmas when we're going through apocalyptic times. They may have already started. I don't know. It depends on how you define it, right?
Right. Right.
But Christmas will be there. Christ will be there. He'll always be there. He's always steady. He's never going to abandon us. He doesn't take any vacation days. He doesn't sleep, and he doesn't ever stop caring. So that's the second message of the book, and it turned out really well. I wasn't sure going in when I came up with the title what that would look like, but most people love the title. They absolutely love it. So I'm glad that I came up with that first, and then we rolled with it from there.
And it really makes you stop and think. And I think what it cracks me up because during COVID, we got to see
Yeah,
how would we respond to some things. And
sure.
my daughter, she was, let me think, she was probably 15 or 16 at the time. And she
Mhm.
used to watch all those prepper shows. Mom, we need to get water.
Oh yeah,
We need to get toilet paper. And I'm like, her name's Florentina. I'm Florentina. We're fine. Like the, you know, those people are so extreme. And it
I
was
know.
probably like 2 months later when COVID and everyone's like rushing, and she's like, "I told you."
I told you so.
And so we called her Prophetina because we said she told us it was becoming,
Okay.
and no one listened to her.
Mhm.
But,
Yes.
and that's just a fraction. Like that's not
Oh,
totally with
sure.
water, without
Sure.
power. But we all get to see like how are we gonna handle things? I said
Yeah.
if I can stay in my house, I have enough books to like start a school. So like if we
Right.
need to restart a school somewhere, my
Right.
house is the way to go. But Marcus Lyon is your main character. He
Yeah.
described himself useless. There's other people in his boss and other people talking about we need to prep, we need to plan. It's
Uh-huh.
also, Christmas is nearing. He was so useless he couldn't even get the Christmas present that his daughter wanted. It's just
Yeah.
showing who he
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
then we have terrorist threats, we have nuclear EMP detonation,
EMP. Yeah.
all these things, and then we're going to see like what's going to happen. And at the beginning, because from the title that
Right.
this is
Right.
coming, you're like, come on, guy, come on, like listen to these people, and it's
Yeah.
just so interesting. But I can see, you said you saw yourself in that character. I can see myself because I'm like,
Yes.
oh, everything's going to be fine. And I think a lot of times
Hmm.
we don't want to think about it too much, but that doesn't mean, just like with COVID and everything that happened, that doesn't mean things aren't going to happen. So
Right.
in the intro, you said that you discovered, or his journey reminded you of yourself. Why would you say that? And this like kind of this personal exploration as you wrote this book.
Well, one of the key things that happens in the book is he becomes determined to at least learn something,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's like, I do consider myself to be fairly useless, but I can learn some things, and
Yeah.
I view myself that way. I can learn how to do new things. Heck, I started doing Instagram Reels a couple of weeks
Look at that.
ago, so I can do that now.
Yeah.
So we can all learn new things,
Hmm.
and like I said, when we're put into those situations, we have a lot more talent than we think, and if we exercise faith and trust in the Lord, He will help us.
Hmm.
And that's certainly been true in my life, not just now as I'm thinking about apocalyptic times, but all through my life. That's been true. And I view myself as being incredibly blessed, incredibly fortunate. And I look back on some of the things that I've been through and that have happened. And I'm like, wow, I really had a lot of help.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't just me extricating myself from this situation or that situation. I had help.
I love that. Yeah, and then you talk about, when all is lost. I mean, and this is a theme of your book. There's
Yeah.
faith. So you're talk about how the faith plays out when the society is collapsing.
Yeah.
We don't have, the things that we normally took to, but what's inside those seeds of faith, that's
Hmm.
where they really show up. So talk a little bit about that, because I mean, Christmas Story. This is, I think, where we get the some of the more Christmas leanings to it,
Right.
because it is a faith journey through this book.
Right. And one of the things that's interesting to think about is it often, unfortunately, takes disasters
Mhm.
to remind people that God exists
Right.
and that they need to turn to Him and that they can trust Him. And you'll see that in the characters in the book. So, for instance, the single mother, Olivia, and her two kids, who end up in that original EMP blast zone. So
Yeah.
they're impacted and they have to flee. There's the part where she discovers her son reading her dusty Bible that she
Mhm.
rarely opens, right? And she has to go on a journey, not only a physical journey to get out
Yeah.
of that area where most of the electronics are knocked out, and so there's no electricity, etc. But she also has to go on a faith journey. How
Mhm.
is she going to rediscover her faith while taking care of her children and trying to keep them safe, not just physically, but spiritually? And then you think about both of the families in the story. You start thinking about how they view the future now. They
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
children, and you're thinking, mean, there are people today who say, I don't want to have a baby because I don't want to bring them into this world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so for those of us who already have kids or have grandkids, and I have grandkids, three and a
Yeah.
half now, and, and I'm thinking, what is the world going to be like for them 5 years from now,
Mhm.
10 years from now, 15 years from now? What are they going to have to deal with? How do I prepare them for that? And boy, there's a lot of prayer involved in that too, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't know how best to prepare them. So I'm doing my best to try and prepare them for what's coming. And I trust that they will have a good future because Heavenly
Mhm.
Father has promised us that the future will be bright. There's a lot of reason for optimism. So we're talking about. I'll show the book. Right. We talked about showing the cover of the book. There it
Yeah.
is.
Yep.
So we've got some nice look through fonts here,
Yeah, very cool.
and
And what I love too is that you have, okay, this is like so out of the box. This is not anything that you're going to ever find anything like it anywhere else. So that's very
nope,
unique.
yeah,
But you have the characters of Marcus and Olivia, so you have two storylines coming together,
right,
and you see a lot of just how they see things differently for their unique points of view. And I think that's interesting too.
correct.
Then and I love how you're talking about this faith thing because it's not like God's like, oh no, I didn't
Hmm.
know the world would crumble all around you. What am I going to do now? Like God
Right.
has a plan. And it's during those times where we're like, I don't want to ever, I don't ever want to deal with whatever it is. The loss, my grandma just passed away last July. I mean, she was my favorite
Yeah.
person other than, like
Yeah.
my husband, my kids, but I
Hmm.
don't ever want to think about that. But God is there. So whatever
Hmm.
we're going through, whether it's loss, a job loss, a family member
Right.
loss,
Right.
health challenges, God is there. And that it is often during those times when we are broken ourselves, when we're
Hmm.
insufficient, when we
Yeah.
can't deal with things, that we turn to God. And so, you know, most of us this week will not be facing the end of the world or the apocalypse.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully,
Yep. Yeah.
but that's where it applies to our own life is. And so let's bring
True.
in the Christmas, more of the Christmas element. You have some miracles that happen. So talk a little about that because you know when I started reading, of course, there's the hunt for the Christmas present, but it's like, how is this like? It's not your typical Christmas story, but you do bring in the message of Christmas. So talk a little bit about that.
Right. And if you've read some of my other writing, you'll see that I like to talk about miracles. I like to introduce miraculous things. We tend sometimes in our busy, hectic lives that are driven by all of the external forces around us, we
Yeah.
tend to forget the miracles that are happening around us all the time. And we can categorize them as large miracles or small miracles, but a miracle is a miracle,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't really matter if it's big or
Yeah.
small. It's
And some things
miraculous.
we don't even realize are miracles, so we look back later and go, "Oh, wow, that
That's
was
right.
a miracle."
And
Yeah.
so I like to introduce some of these quote unquote larger miracles just to remind us that God can do anything. There
Mhm.
isn't anything he can't do. And he's demonstrated it time and time and time again. And we have not only ancient records of that in the scriptures, but we have modern records of that,
Mhm.
of these completely miraculous things happening, right? For instance, so we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, right?
Right.
And there were several miracles during the Revolutionary War that were just astounding. How
Mhm.
did the fog roll in that allowed George Washington to escape with his army from Long
Yeah.
Island?
Yeah.
How did that happen? There was no no reason to expect that given the other weather patterns that were around at the time.
Yeah.
So the Lord is always taking care of his people, those
Mhm.
who really believe. So I do like to introduce the miraculous in there. And it's happening at the individual level and it's happening at the macro level. So I'm dealing with both
Yeah.
in the book. And I love political science. I minored in political science. I love politics because it's all linked.
Yeah.
Economics and politics, I mean, it's all linked. And so we're dealing at the macro level with these individuals and their families and their community, and then we're dealing at the macro level. Well, okay, so what's going to happen what's the leadership of the United States going to do? How are they going to react to this, EMP blast that was done by an Islamic radical? And then how are other countries going to react to what the United States did? and how's that all going to play? And it's really fascinating to think through the geopolitics. And we're doing that today live with Iran and with what's going on in Ukraine and Venezuela and other places. There's lots of geopolitical pieces moving around, shifting in ways we haven't really seen before. Well, we've seen them before, but maybe not in this particular way, right? So it's really fascinating to be able to deal with both of those things in the same. And it's not a very long book. I didn't want it to be long, but
Yeah, it's long
it's
and it's
moving
not,
pretty fast, but we're dealing with all of it.
and it's not a complex read. So I know we were, Mike's talking in big words here, and you might be like, I have no idea what he's talking about, and that's okay. The story, like, you're just getting carried along with the story. So don't feel like, oh, this, so just know that you're going to be seeing through the eyes of the characters who are also trying to figure out what's going on, who are facing a lot of hardship and a lot of challenges, trying to protect their family. So the story reads like it's a novel. There's characters, there's things happening. It's not overwhelming. But what I love is that, people that know a lot more than me about these things can also make a really good story. And I feel like every book I read, I mean, that's what fiction is. You learn about that life. You're walking through life through someone else's shoes, but you're also looking about faith and other things. So that's what I liked. Like things that I would never get a degree in that, Mike. Like that is so far. But I appreciate that these things, but then also the story just flows. So I will throw that in there if people are saying like, I don't know what he's talking about. That's okay. Because the
So
story.
what did you think about the toy name I came up with? Luminaptus, an educational toy that was the hottest thing at Christmas. That's the toy he
Remind me of Illuminati. The Illuminati.
Luminaptus, yeah. The Illuminati.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a fun one to think through. But
and always, I mean, we have 10 kids. There's always like, what do you want? Why is the hottest? I was just in Pigeon Forge. I was in Branson, and there was a toy store. And all these people were lined up, and we're like, oh, is there a big sale? And there was some squishy ball thing. I don't even know what it is. The hot popular thing. I don't even know. So there's always going to be something out there that's.
Yeah, my granddaughters now are keeping me up to date on what the hot things are. So.
I don't even know. And I'm looking at that. I'm like, that little squishy ball. Why are people in line for a squishy ball? I don't even know. But then that's real. Like it's real life. Like it's real life. And if ordinary families had to face these types of things, but then faith and Christmas and all of those. Okay, so I don't want to give too much away, but there's a major turning point. Dealing with, we'll just say Bethlehem. We're not going to give too many details, but so. You talk about miracles. Why was this important to tie like these types of miracles, into your story?
Well, I didn't put this in the original outline. The thing that happened in Jerusalem, or in actually in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
But here's the spoiler I will grant.
Yes. I know. I'm like, how can we talk about this without talking about too much?
And that is, here we are going through apocalyptic times in the book. And the Lord reveals to the world the precise place where he came to the earth the first time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating to think about. And why would he not reveal that to us at some point? Well, he will at some point, right?
Right.
Why not soon, as we're moving toward his second coming? Right? And we're trying to prepare for his second coming. We're trying to prepare the world to be good enough for his second coming. The world is plenty bad enough for the second coming to happen. It is. We're worse than Sodom and Gomorrah, easily. But what we need is enough good people that are ready for it. I think that's what he's waiting for, is for us to be ready.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I've heard several people say that recently, and it rings true to me.
It just helps us that we can learn these lessons without currently having to go through those situations. So yeah. And through fiction.
For sure. And I mentioned to you that I just finished the first draft of the second spinoff to the Barabbas series, the Barabbas trilogy, and it's called Polycarp.
Oh, yeah.
And it's always fascinating to me to go back to the lives of the early saints and what they went through and the kind of courage that they showed And so I wrote this book about Polycarp, who was the bishop of Smyrna. So he's a real guy, and he was martyred in about 150-ish AD. And he's described as a bridge between the apostles
Yeah.
and then how the church went forward, because he staunchly defended the apostolic teachings against things like Docetism. So Docetism said that, or maybe it's pronounced Docetism, but it said that basically Christ didn't really take on a body of flesh and bone
Mm,
when he came to the earth, because the flesh is dirty. That's what the Gnostics said,
yeah.
right? And he was just really spirit. So it was kind of an illusion. He was a phantasma of sorts, which makes no sense, right? But that's kind of the Hellenistic influence and some of the Roman and Greek philosophies entering into church thinking, right?
Right.
And Polycarp was one of those who fought against that and said, no, the apostles saw him, they felt him, they interacted with him, they knew he was a real person. He told them he was a real person. He
Mm,
told them why he came and why he had to die, even though they had a hard time understanding the dying part, right?
right.
And the Chosen portrays that so well, in
Mhm.
my view, how they struggled with this concept of how can you die? How can you
Yeah.
actually die? Right? You're the Messiah.
Yeah.
But he explained to them how he had to do that, and then how he had to be resurrected. And the resurrection is real, right? In the case for Christ. Remember that book and the movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much evidence and so many witnesses, more witnesses of the resurrection than most any other major event that's ever happened in history, right?
Hmm.
And but people were trying to deny it, and Polycarp stood against that, and he was eventually martyred. And I think in part it was because he was defending the apostolic
Yeah.
teachings that he was
Yeah.
martyred.
Yeah.
So
And
anyway, that's really interesting and useful for me to think about. Such a joy to write that kind of book, and it centers me better spiritually
yeah.
to look at the past and see those heroes. And I think I told you about this book because you have a daughter that lives in the Czech Republic. Is that
Yes,
right?
she lives in the Czech Republic. Yep.
In the Czech Republic. So there was a book called "Live Not by Lies" by Rod Dreher, and he went and interviewed a few years ago. He interviewed survivors of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s in the Eastern Bloc countries,
Yeah. Yeah.
Christians who survived the repression of
Hmm.
Christianity under the Iron Curtain, right?
Yeah.
And he interviews them, and some of their stories are just absolutely amazing,
Oh, we've
right?
heard we've heard stories from people. Just like
Yes.
you said, miracle stories that happen. People. I have a friend that smuggled in Bibles and how she was protected. I mean, miracles and miracles. Just yesterday, our friend, our daughter's pastor, he's in
Okay.
town. Raising support. Just talking with him, and I think when you talk about how Christianity continued through those times. In
Yeah.
the Czech Republic right now, less than 1% of people are Christians.
Yeah.
And so, like my son-in-law's parents, grandparents are Christians, and that's the thing I want to talk about when I go back over there. Like, how did you survive? And what I think is fascinating, Mike, right now, you're talking
Yeah.
about you're writing up. You just finished Polycarp, or at least the first
Hmm.
draft. Talking about this martyrs in history, and then I can see where this new Christmas story came because you're immersed in that world, and then seeing what is happening around us, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes,
like
for sure.
it's like a it's bringing it together. I think so many times, um, you know, they talk about when you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. So it's a call, really, I think, for all of us to wake up and say these are
That is
ordinary
very
people.
true.
Stories of ordinary people. And just yesterday, someone in my home that when we talk about miracles, when I go to the Czech Republic, we talk about miracles. In my own life, I've seen miracles. It's just amazing. So we can learn, and I'm so thankful that we can learn from fiction, where we don't have to go through these things. And whatever we do have to face, through these stories, we learn about faith, we learn about trusting God, we learn about overcoming hard times. And that's, I think, why we love fiction, why we're avid readers of Christian fiction, because we can live all these other lives and we can learn all these lessons about God's faithfulness and
Yes.
truth without
Yes.
having to live those things ourselves.
Yes. And when we do have to live similar things ourselves, right? we have some good examples to lean on to help us figure out how to deal with those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good.
And I've been so benefited by delving into all of those things. So I'll give you a quick example. There was a Father Kolakovich of Slovakia, and he foresaw after World War II that the communists would control the church by subduing the clergy, which
Mm-hmm.
they did.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that the spiritual trials of Christians under communism would be extreme. So he taught anyone who would listen to him, right, within the church, that success in withstanding those trials would require a total life commitment to Christ.
Mm.
So we can ask ourselves that question: do we have a total life commitment to Christ? Are we ready? And he established cells of young Catholics who came together for prayer, study, and fellowship. And he taught them to see, judge, and then act. And in seeing, he said, be awake to the realities around you. So we need to be aware. Judge, discern soberly the meaning of those realities in the light of what you know to be true. So in the light of Christ. That's how you judge and discern, is in the light of Christ. And then act to resist evil. And in many ways, the way they acted to resist evil is they had all of these underground churches and underground classes, and they taught their children in the basement, and they blacked out the windows, and they had secret printing presses, and all of these things. They were acting to resist evil because they judged that what was happening to them was evil.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
So fascinating. Yeah. We have a friend, Peter, and he remembers they had a garden and they would have smuggled Bibles, and neighbors would come and to get vegetables from them. In the bottom, they'd have Bibles, and that's how they passed around the Bibles.
Oh, really?
Under bags of vegetables. Yeah. I mean, it's just as people were sitting outside their doorway. They were walking in and out with Bibles as they're being watched constantly because they were Christians. Yeah. And I think
such amazing people. Yeah.
It's such amazing.
And part of the message again of this latest book of mine is we shouldn't sell ourselves short. We can be heroic like that too.
So maybe he's not useless after all.
What's that?
So maybe he's not useless after all.
Yes, and he discovers that he's not useless.
Exactly. Yeah, and so as we wrap this up, if there was one message that you hope that readers can take away from this book, what would it be?
It is that total life commitment to Christ. That's the message of the book. We need to remember Christmas, no matter our circumstances, either now before the apocalypse or when the apocalypse comes. We need to focus our lives on Christ, and He'll help us get through whatever challenges face us. And there are lots and lots of challenges, whether they're physical or emotional or mental, or lots of things, lots of ways that Satan is trying to tear us down. But the Lord is always there to help us.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that. Well, Mike, it's always great having you here. Where can readers go to find out more about you and all your books? We just barely touched on a couple of the things that he's written. Fascinating. Yeah. I love the way his mind works because it literally are things I would never think about. So it's great. But Mike, where can they go to find more information about you and your books?
You can go to my website, mdhouselive.com. And I have all the books up there and some of the interviews I've done and speeches I've given.
It's so cool that we can even just share our information and our knowledge of what we learned and storytelling. Well, thank you so much for being here, and of course we'll have all the links in our show notes.
All right, thanks, Trisha.
Thanks.
Have a great one.
You too.
Bye.